The crisp, cream-colored envelope felt like a declaration of war in Sarah's hands. It was an invitation, not to a party or a gala, but to a local spelling bee. A children's spelling bee. And it was addressed to her daughter, Maya. The sender? Mr. Alistair Finch, the millionaire whose son Sarah tutored, a man who saw her as little more than the help. A man who had no idea he was about to be spectacularly, publicly, humbled. Sarah smoothed the thick cardstock, her fingers tracing the embossed gold lettering of the Finch family crest. For 3 years, she had been a ghost in Alistair Finch's palatial mansion, a silent presence who arrived through the back door and left after her 2-hour session with his struggling son, Leo. She was the tutor, a title he delivered with the same inflection he used for the gardener or the cook. He'd never once used her name. His wife, a woman who seemed to float through the house on a cloud of expensive perfume and polite indifference, was no better. They were a matched set of gilded ignorance, their world a bubble of inherited wealth and unquestioned privilege. They saw Sarah's dark skin and her modest clothes and drew their own conclusions. They saw her as a stepping stone for their son, a tool to be used and discarded. They never saw her. And they certainly never saw Maya. Maya, Sarah's brilliant, beautiful, 10-year-old daughter. Maya, who devoured books like they were candy and whose mind was a glittering galaxy of words. Maya, who had spent the last 4 years of her young life in a relentless, joyful pursuit of lexicographical mastery. The invitation was for the annual Finch Foundation Spelling Bee, a charity event Mr. Finch hosted with much fanfare. It was a local affair, a chance for the children of his wealthy friends and business associates to compete for a modest trophy and a hefty donation to the charity of their choice. It was a performance of philanthropy, a carefully curated display of community spirit. And now, he was inviting Maya. Sarah's first instinct was to laugh. A bitter, incredulous laugh that bubbled up from the depths of her weary soul. Did he really think Maya, her Maya, needed an invitation to a local spelling bee? Did he think this was some grand opportunity for the poor tutor's daughter to rub shoulders with her betters? The condescension was a physical thing, a bitter taste in her mouth. She could almost hear him now, his voice dripping with false magnanimity. Give the girl a chance to shine, he'd probably say to his wife. It will be good for her. Sarah's second instinct, the one that quickly overpowered the first, was a slow-burning fire of righteous anger. This wasn't an invitation, it was a challenge. A challenge born of ignorance and prejudice. And it was a challenge she and Maya were more than ready to accept. She found Maya in her room, her small desk buried under a mountain of books. Dictionaries of etymology, Latin and Greek root guides, and stacks of flashcards filled every available surface. Maya was hunched over a well-worn copy of Merriam-Webster's Unabridged, her brow furrowed in concentration. Maya, honey, Sarah said, her voice soft. Maya looked up, her large, intelligent eyes blinking away the world of words she had been lost in. Hi, Mom. Did you know that allogoria means excessive and often incoherent talkativeness? It comes from the Greek logos, meaning a word, and aroia, meaning a flow. Sarah smiled, her heart swelling with a familiar mix of pride and love. I did not know that, my little wordsmith. But I have something for you. She handed Maya the invitation. Maya read it, her expression unreadable. Then, a slow, mischievous grin spread across her face. It was a grin that mirrored Sarah's own fiery determination. So, Mr. Finch wants me to spell? Maya asked, her voice laced with an amusement that was far beyond her years. He thinks he's doing you a favor, Sarah said, her voice tight. He has no idea, does he? Maya said, her grin widening. Not a clue, Sarah confirmed. And in that moment, a silent pact was formed between mother and daughter. They would go to Mr. Finch's spelling bee. They would play his game. And they would win. Not for the trophy, not for the charity donation, but for something far more valuable, respect. The day of the spelling bee arrived, a sun-drenched Saturday in late spring. The Finch estate was a spectacle of manicured lawns and blooming rose gardens. A large white tent had been erected on the back lawn, filled with rows of white chairs and a stage decorated with the Finch Foundation logo. The air buzzed with the chatter of wealthy parents and their impeccably dressed children. Sarah and Maya arrived, not through the back door this time, but through the grand front entrance. Sarah had dressed Maya in a simple but elegant blue dress, her hair braided in intricate cornrows. Sarah herself wore a dress that was a little brighter, a little bolder than her usual tutor attire. They were not here to be invisible today. Mr. Finch, resplendent in a pastel-colored suit, was greeting guests at the entrance. When he saw Sarah and Maya, his smile faltered for a fraction of a second. "Ah, the tutor," he said, his voice a little too loud. "And this must be your daughter." "Her name is Maya," Sarah said, her voice clear and steady. Of course," Mr. Finch said, recovering his composure. "Welcome, Maya. We're so glad you could join us. It's a wonderful opportunity for you." Maya simply smiled, a small, enigmatic smile that gave nothing away. The spelling bee began. The first few rounds were easy, a gentle warm-up for the young spellers. Words like sunshine, butterfly, and picnic were spelled with ease. Maya, when it was her turn, spelled her words with a quiet confidence that was almost unnerving. She didn't hesitate, she didn't ask for definitions or origins. She simply spelled the word and sat back down. As the rounds progressed, the words grew more difficult. The number of contestants began to dwindle. The children of Mr. Finch's friends, the ones who had been prepped by expensive tutors and had attended elite private schools, started to stumble. Chiaroscuro, the pronouncer called out. A boy in a tiny blazer and a bow tie paled. Charoscuro, he stammered, his voice cracking. The dreaded bell rang. One by one, they fell. Bouillabaisse. Onomatopoeia. Lackadaisical. The words were a minefield, and the children were walking through it with trepidation. All except Maya. She remained a beacon of calm in a sea of anxiety. When it was her turn, she would walk to the microphone, her small frame radiating an aura of unshakable confidence. Your word is eudaimonic, the pronouncer said. Maya didn't flinch. Eudaimonic, she repeated, her voice clear and crisp. Eudaimonic, eudaimonic. A murmur went through the crowd. Mr. Finch, who had been watching from the front row with a smug expression, began to look a little less comfortable. He had expected the tutor's daughter to be one of the first to go. He had expected her to be a feel-good story, a charity case who got to participate. He had not expected her to be a contender. Finally, it was down to two. Maya and a boy named Sterling, the son of one of Mr. Finch's oldest and wealthiest friends. Sterling was a year older than Maya and had a reputation for being a prodigy. He had a cocky, self-assured air about him, the kind that comes from a lifetime of being told you are the best. The duel between Maya and Sterling was a masterclass in spelling. They went back and forth, spelling words that would have stumped most adults. Pneumonultramicroscopic silicovolcaniconiosis. Floxinosinahilipilification. Anti-disestablishmentarianism. The crowd was on the edge of their seats. The atmosphere in the tent was electric. Sarah watched, her heart pounding in her chest. She knew what Maya was capable of, but seeing her daughter on that stage, holding her own against a boy who had every advantage in the world, filled her with a fierce, protective pride. Then came the word that would change everything. Your word, the pronouncer said, looking at Sterling, is logorrhea. Sterling's confident smirk faltered. He asked for the definition, the language of origin. He stalled for time. Finally, he took a deep breath and began to spell. Logorrha. The bell rang. A collective gasp went through the crowd. Sterling's face turned a blotchy red. He had misspelled it. He had used one R instead of two. Now it was Maya's turn. If she spelled the next word correctly, she would be the champion. The pronouncer looked at Maya. Your word is schadenfreude. A ripple of laughter went through the crowd. The irony was not lost on them. Schadenfreude, the pleasure derived from another person's misfortune. Maya, however, did not smile. She walked to the microphone, her expression serious. She looked out at the audience, her gaze lingering for a moment on Mr. Finch. His face was a mask of disbelief. Schadenfreude, Maya said, her voice ringing with a clarity that cut through the tension in the tent. Schadnfreude, Schadenfreude. There was a moment of stunned silence. And then, the tent erupted in applause. People were on their feet, cheering, whistling. Maya had done it. She had won. Sarah rushed to the stage, her eyes filled with tears. She wrapped her arms around Maya, holding her tight. You did it, baby, she whispered. You did it. Mr. Finch, looking dazed, walked onto the stage to present the trophy. He handed it to Maya, his hand trembling slightly. Congratulations, he mumbled, his voice barely audible over the applause. But Maya wasn't done. She took the microphone from the stand. The crowd quieted, eager to hear from the young champion. Thank you, Maya said, her voice small but steady. Thank you for this trophy. But I have a confession to make. A hush fell over the crowd. What could this little girl possibly have to confess? This isn't my first spelling bee, Maya said, her eyes sparkling with a mischievous light. And this isn't my first trophy. She paused for dramatic effect. Last year, she announced, her voice gaining strength, I won the Scripps National Spelling Bee. The silence in the tent was absolute. You could have heard a pin drop. The Scripps National Spelling Bee. The most prestigious, the most difficult, the most celebrated spelling competition in the country. This little girl, the tutor's daughter, was the national champion. The implications of her words hung in the air, thick and heavy. The local spelling bee, the one Mr. Finch had so graciously invited her to, was child's play for her. It was like inviting a world-class marathon runner to a toddler's sack race. The condescension, the prejudice, the sheer, unadulterated ignorance of Alistair Finch was laid bare for all to see. He hadn't been doing her a favor. He had been making a fool of himself. The crowd's reaction was a slow-motion wave of understanding, followed by a fresh wave of applause, this time louder, more enthusiastic, more genuine than before. They weren't just clapping for a spelling bee winner anymore. They were clapping for a champion who had just delivered the most epic, the most satisfying, the most perfectly spelled takedown they had ever witnessed. Mr. Finch's face was a study in scarlet. He looked like he wanted the ground to open up and swallow him whole. He had been publicly, humiliatingly, exposed. His carefully constructed world of superiority had been shattered by a 10-year-old girl and a single, perfectly spelled word. Sarah watched him, a slow, triumphant smile spreading across her face. She had wanted respect. Maya had just earned them a lifetime supply. Later that evening, back in their small, cozy apartment, Maya placed her new trophy next to the much larger, much more impressive Scripps National Spelling Bee trophy on her bookshelf. "Do you think Mr. Finch will still want me to tutor Leo?" Sarah asked, a hint of amusement in her voice. Maya giggled. "I don't know, Mom. But I have a feeling he'll remember your name now." Sarah laughed, a real, genuine laugh that came from the heart. She looked at her daughter, her brilliant, brave, beautiful daughter, and knew that this was just the beginning. Maya was destined for great things. And Sarah would be there every step of the way, her biggest fan, her staunchest defender, her proudest mother. The next day, a check arrived in the mail. It was from the Finch Foundation, for a sum far greater than the prize money for the spelling bee. There was no note, no apology. Just the check. Sarah looked at it for a long moment. Then, she endorsed it and mailed it to a charity that supported literacy programs for underprivileged children. She didn't need Alistair Finch's money. She had something far more valuable. She had her daughter. And together, they were unstoppable. Did you enjoy this story? If so, please don't forget to like this video and subscribe to our channel for more inspiring stories like this one. Your support helps us create more content that matters.